The FTSE Global All Cap, the FTSE All World, both good global funds, but which one is better? That's exactly what we're going to be talking through in this video. We're going to be diving into the specific pages of the funds, and we're going to be running through the fees, the portfolio data, the dividends, returns, the type of investment they are, and accessibility. So 6 factors we're going to be using to review these two funds. Before we get into the detail, to give you a very quick answer, they're ultimately both good options. They're both very popular. They're both global funds that track the global stock market. They're both low cost, passive, can be automated, hands off. Ultimately, they're great ways to invest for the long term. I actually use one of these funds myself. They also both offer income and accumulation options. And ideally, if you don't need the income today, use the accumulation version. So then all the dividends will be automatically reinvested. But that's the high level TLDR out of the way. Let's get into these funds. I'm also going to be showing you my screen. I thought that's a nice informative way so you can actually see the fund pages on Vanguard's website, what specific buttons and bits to click in to find this information. So if you yourself want to analyze another fund, you can follow a similar process to what I'm doing here. So firstly, let's look at the fees. As you can see, the FTSE Global All Cap on this front page has an ongoing charge of 0.23%. That is a tiny bit higher than the FTSE All World's fee of 0.22%. It seems tiny, and in reality it is tiny, but I've done a bit of quick maths on the screen and you can see that means the FTSE Global All Cap is actually 4.5% more expensive than the FTSE All World, which technically means if the funds get the exact same return, then the FTSE All World will be 0.1% better off because of the lower fee. You can also see the exact fees every Vanguard fund will pay by simply Googling Vanguard full costs and charges UK. If you then scroll down, you'll come to this PDF document. You can see it's purple. I've clicked into this probably hundreds of times over the years. This then tells you the exact fees you pay on Vanguard. One big reason why I like them, they're very transparent on all their fees. Search in for the FTSE Global All Cap and you can see the total fee you will pay is 0.43%, which includes the 0.15% platform fee. Because here you have the 0.23% ongoing costs and also 0.05 transaction costs. So the total fee, including both of those and the platform, is 0.43%. The FTSE All World now is 0.42%. Slightly different fees going on here. The transaction costs are 0.02, but it also has one-off costs of 0.03%, which I believe because it's an ETF rather than an index fund, which is 0.5 of this video we're going to come on to. But ultimately, once again, the total cost is 0.42%, which is 0.01% cheaper than the FTSE Global All Cap. I'm going to be honest, the fee probably shouldn't be the deciding factor. They essentially are both low-cost global funds. Secondly, let's look at the portfolio data, and this is the biggest difference between the two funds. As you can see, the FTSE Global All Cap has 7,118 stocks, over 7,000 companies. The FTSE All World has 3,666 stocks, so it actually has roughly half the amount of stocks as the FTSE Global All Cap. The reason for that, and the big difference between the funds, is that the FTSE Global All Cap includes medium, large, and small size companies, whereas the FTSE All World only includes medium and large size companies. It hasn't got small cap stocks. And that makes up roughly 10% of the FTSE Global All Cap, which the FTSE All World omits. So essentially, it's slightly less diversified. If we come into the portfolio data, and you'll see this with pretty much any global fund you look at, scroll down, it's dominated by the United States, roughly 62% of the fund. You then have Japan, UK, China, but of course, making up tiny portions really compared to the US. If you scroll a bit further down, you'll once again see it's dominated by technology, nearly 25%. You then have financials, industrials, and consumer discretionary. If we then come over to the FTSE All World, you're going to see a similar theme. The United States, once again, is 62%. You then have Japan, UK, and China. The percentages are slightly different because the FTSE All World doesn't include small cap stocks, but it roughly looks the same. Once again, if you scroll down to the industries, you'll see technology is the top, a little bit larger this time at 26%, but then once again, we've got financials, consumer discretionary, and industrials. Interestingly, consumer discretionary and industrials are the other way round, but they're still 13-14% roughly of the fund. If we go back to the FTSE Global All Cap, the top 10 holdings are really the largest companies in the world, particularly the US tech companies, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia. You can see the list there. The FTSE All World once again has the same top 10, but Microsoft, Apple, and Nvidia make up a slightly larger percentage of the fund. And that once again is because it's got 3,500 less stocks, because there's no small cap stocks, which is why they make up slightly more. So if those companies outperform compared to the rest of the world, which they have been, then the FTSE All World will deliver slightly higher returns compared to the FTSE Global All Cap. But if small cap stocks outperform compared to the rest of the world, then the vice versa, the FTSE Global All Cap will do slightly better than the FTSE All World. But the point I'm making here, once again, 2 points, I guess. One, the FTSE Global All Cap is more diversified with double the stocks. But, and number two, it doesn't really materially change the countries it's invested into, the industries it's invested into, or the top companies. I'm going to tell you which fund I use at the end, but ultimately this sort of point here with the portfolio data is why I use one fund rather than the other. Now let's look at the dividends. I'm not sure why, and actually quite strangely, but also quite funnily, if I can say that, the dividends aren't available on the Vanguard's website. I have no idea why, but luckily on Fidelity's website, one of their competitors, I can see the dividends. So the FTSE Global All Cap has a 1.53% historical yield, and the FTSE All World has 1.55%. So once again, literally nothing separating the two funds. The fourth thing I'm going to come on to, and this is probably what most people always hone in on, I guess is natural, the returns. Let's look at the past returns of both of these funds. So for the FTSE Global All Cap, a lump sum 1 year ago of £10,000 would be worth just under £12,000 today. For the FTSE All World, it's just over £12,000 at £12,329. Over the last 3 years, the FTSE All World would leave you with £12,728 compared to the FTSE All World's £11,590. So there's actually a bit of outperformance there from the FTSE Global All Cap. But then over the last 5 years, £10,000 in the FTSE Global All Cap gives you 16,880 compared to the FTSE All World 17,328. So now the FTSE All World has slightly outperformed. What I'm trying to get across here, and as you can see, the returns, of course, because they're two different funds, fluctuate year to year, but over the longer term, they really give identical returns. Ultimately, it's because small cap stocks sometimes outperform and sometimes they underperform, which then means the two funds, as there's a difference between the two funds, can fluctuate year on year, but ultimately, over the longer term, their returns are similar. Now, that's the main comparison of the funds. Which one should you use? Well, that really is going to depend on points 5 and 6 that we're going to run through. Another difference between these two funds is the type of investment. As I alluded to earlier, the FTSE Global All Cap is an index fund, whereas the FTSE All World is an ETF. If you're just going to choose one, invest automatically and hold for the long term, there's not really going to be much different between the two. A different example, but if you have an S&P 500 index fund or an S&P 500 ETF that both give the same return over the long term, they're just slightly different types of instruments. One drawback with ETFs on Vanguard's platform is you can't buy fractional shares. So if you invest, say, £100 or let's say £150, you will only buy one share of the FTSE All World because it's currently £102. You would then have £48 left over in your account. With the FTSE Global All Cap, because it's an index fund, the full £150 will be invested. But there are other platforms that do offer fractional share investing into ETFs, and specifically the FTSE All World, which brings me on to point 6, and that is accessibility of these funds on platforms. Of course, they're both available on Vanguard, but ultimately the FTSE All World, VWRL, VWRP, is available on much more platforms than the FTSE Global All Cap because it's an ETF, and ETFs are generally more accessible. So Trading212, a very popular platform, the FTSE All World is available on that, and you can invest with fractional shares. The FTSE Global All Cap isn't available on that. The FTSE Global All Cap is generally only available on bigger, older school platforms like Vanguard, like Hargreaves Lansdown, like AJ Bell. Whereas the FTSE All World is generally available on most platforms because it's an ETF and it's more accessible. Which is why I think ultimately, and to really wrap up all of this, they're both great funds. The best one to use is probably the one that's accessible to you based on what platform you use. If you use Vanguard, you can use either of them. If you use Trading 212, you can only use FTSE All World. So almost pigeonhole you in a good way to just use that one, and you haven't got to overcomplicate it. Of course, not big differences. It's important to know that the two funds are different, slightly different types of investments, and they are available on different platforms. So ultimately, the best thing to do is see which one is available on whatever platform you use. If they're both available, then you've got a decision to make. If only one's available, then it's almost a bit simpler and you can just choose that one because they're both great options. I hope this has been helpful, a detailed dive into these funds. Of course, this sort of analysis I've done on the funds is very high level and simple, but you can then use it to analyze other funds on Vanguard's website or other websites. The last thing I thought I'd touch on is the one that I use specifically. And of course, if you follow me on any social media, you'll know I use the FTSE Global All Cap. Ultimately, I use it for two reasons. Number one, it's more diversified. It includes more stocks, and I want to be as diversified as possible. And number two, as I'm using Vanguard's website, and you cannot buy fractional shares with ETFs, I don't want cash left over sitting in my account that I have to invest manually. I'd rather invest £150 and the full £150 gets invested into the index funds, which is why I use the FTSE Global All Cap index fund, specifically the accumulation fund, so all my dividends are also automatically reinvested. Which fund do you use? Let me know in the comments below, and if you've got any questions about these funds, let me know and I'll help you out. And also, if you want me to do any other comparisons between other funds, Vanguard or otherwise, let me know again in the comments and I'll make a video. Thank you for watching.